Should you play a ranger? Hello, I'm Fire. I'm just going to be talking about should you play a ranger in Ashes of Creation, or is it the class for you? This isn't going to be like I'm not going to be showing tech or anything like that, but I'm just going to go over like what it is playing the ranger class and if it's for you. So basically every class is the same functionally at a baseline, right? Like everyone has dodge rolls, right? Everyone has block as an option with the dodge and the E for block. I have mine bound to left control still because there's not enough keys yet to warrant freeing that up, so I've just left it at left control. And then let's look at the skills here for what actually makes the ranger the ranger. So let me open up not the hero, it is the skill book. There we go. And there's all these different tabs at the top. All right, so with ranger, I'm just going to go through the skills here quick. You can skip ahead if you already know how all the abilities work to talk about just my review. All right, so first off, scatter shot, just an AoE, 2 charges. It only does slightly more damage than just your base weapon damage. And if you want, you can hold your mouse over, your character plane, your character sheet to see like the full details of the auto attacks and stuff for your character. So scatter shot, basically just 2 pumps. It does a little AoE burst. It has an option for concentrated, so you can hold it down and it'll do like a beam. This does have problems going up and down. It looks like they must have just changed it because that downward following slope, normally it shoots like straight horizontally off into the air. I wonder if it does the same uphill. Yeah, it looks like it follows the terrain. That's kind of nice. Must have been a new change I didn't notice. Yeah, so scatter shot is like your far away, like club killer. Otherwise, it's basically just you fire it off for like the short AoE, and it also applies your imbue ammo effects. Disengage is just your generic press a button, do a little hop. If someone's in melee, it gets a reset, and this just means you can do it in any direction. So disengage is just a little whoop. It's good for engaging into like Zerg fights, or if you need to close distance, because like everyone gets the dodges for mobility, right? But not everyone gets the disengage. So moving on. Headshot, so below 50% health, it does 200% weapon damage plus another 50%. So this deals 25% more below 50%, and it gains 25% pen versus dazed and 50% pen against silenced targets. So below 50%, another 50% maximum health. So it's dealing 200% plus 25% plus another 50%. So it's dealing almost 300% damage, plus it has 25% built-in pen with daze, which is the ammo type that I'm running right now anyway, plus a chance for, 50% pen. This is like an instant cast snipe. Moving on, let's talk about ammo types first. So there are 3 ammo types. Concussion. So basically, ammo types are whenever you auto attack, like the 3rd hit, or whenever you use scatter shot, it has a chance to proc an armament, whatever. I just call it an ammo. So there are concussion, which gives dazed. There is the bleeds, and then there is the snared. You can't really ever run snare because the snares share a diminishing returns category with chill, and all of your mages need chill to proc their freezing and their shattering. So if you run armament, even just PvE, you're going to DR cap the target so that your mages can't get their shatter combos off. So this is basically a kind of dead talent. So you're left with bleed or the concussion ammo. The bleed is good because skills like snipe consume the bleed to apply hemorrhaging, and then also skills like vine field consume the bleed to apply hemorrhaging. And if you hold left shift, hemorrhaging is 20% bleed damage every 0.5 seconds, last 5 seconds. So that is 100% over 5 seconds times 2. So that's 200% weapon damage over 5 seconds. And since scattershot applies your ammo, you can scattershot a big clump, vines field, and you can put 200% weapon damage on all of them in a big AoE. So that's very good. And then the dazed makes it so that targets cast spells slower. But the main use of dazed is for the headshot bonus for increased penetration, and then if you silence them, it gives it extra more penetration. And then daze is also good for being consumed by thundering shot to apply silence. So right now this is kind of Ranger's main benefit in Zerg versus Zerg, is you can either go for like some more bleed and like get big hemorrhaging on AoE, or you can go for the concussion into thundering to like silence a single target and then like kind of, you know, focus that target down. And even then, the AoE slow from applying daze can help other people too. Daze does only have a 50% chance to becoming dazed. So if you scattershot, it doesn't always affect. It seems to be 50%, but maybe I'm wrong. So yeah, like I said, there are 3 main things to the Ranger, right? There's your skills that do damage, but there's the ammo, the armaments, which are those 3. There are the hunts, which are these 3. I never use bear. Bear, tiger, raven hunts. So these 3 hunts down here, and then there's the mark, 1, 2, 3. So the marks have the top left and the hunts have the bottom right. So let's talk about the hunts first. So Hunt of the Tiger, 10% crit damage. This seems to be multiplicative on top of whatever crit damage you have currently, so that's pretty good. There is a problem with crit, which I will talk about later though. So that's just Hunt of the Tiger, 10% multiplicative crit damage. Hunt of the Raven gives penetration. This seems to be somewhere between 7 to 10%. My guess is that if you have no penetration, this gives you 10% pen, but since a lot of people are stacking penetration, this has the DR, so it's down to like 6 to 7%, but in general, usually this is the default one you go to, especially while leveling. And then there is Hunt of the Bear. This decreases the physical damage you take. Time to kill, there is basically never really a used case for this. Someone should be healing you. You should not have taken that damage in the first place, etc. Right? Like, there's no situation in which your reduced damage wouldn't be offset by just doing more damage. Okay, moving on to marks. Increased critical chance versus the target. The problem is a lot of people have a built-in like 150% crit power, so it's a 25% chance to do 50% more damage. But with physical defenses, if you have Constitution, you get physical critical avoidance. So yeah, so you're getting even a lower chance to crit someone. And I don't know if this is multiplicative or what, but generally you don't go for the Mark of the Tiger. And then finally, Mark of the Raven. Marks the target, triggering physical damage every time the target is hit, scaling based on target's missing % health. You really do want to wait till 50% HP if you can. Otherwise, you know, if you want to send it right off the rip, you can. This mark is actually really good. I would personally probably say it's the best. And then there's Mark of the Bear, which reduces the target's mitigation by 25%. So this is basically like the defense, like it removes part of this physical mitigation that they have. I have this right now because this is like my PvP kind of spec, so I'm not going to go into that. So those are the marks. So you basically just always have a hunt on as a passive toggle, and then you just use the mark once a minute on your target, and then you just always have your ammo on passive. So one of the things about Ranger is that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So you have 9 talents, and you can only pick 3 of them, and 2 of them are just passive on all the time. So we have like 9 dead talents with only 1 that we actively use, and it's on a 60-second cooldown. So this makes Ranger one of the more alt-friendly / easier classes to play, because we just don't have that many buttons to press in terms of complexity, at least in terms of the other classes, at least when you look at Bard at a minimum. Moving on, Snipe. This is the big tuna kahuna of Ranger. There. So Snipe has a 35 meter range. Normally, you can only cast abilities within 30 meters. So I can cast Snipe before I can use any of my other abilities. And the longbow has an auto attack range of 35 meters compared to normal weapons, which are just 30 meters. But I have a melee and a ranged weapon here, as you can see. So just to show you casting Snipes, it has a long channel time. You can't WASD, but you can hop in place. and it hits for, you know, pretty big damage, and it has 400% scaling. It also has 30% increased critical chance, and it has 20% increased attack speed for 5 seconds after casting Snipe. So if you're running a short bow, you cast Snipe off the rip, auto attack until you get Arrow Storm, and that's the main benefit before you start using abilities. Otherwise, this is kind of just neat, I guess. Bear Trap, right now, they are instant no matter what talent you pick. So just Shift Z, you know, 30 meter range, same as before, right? Yeah, 30 meter range, and you just cast and it just shows up there. There is no like trigger time, and the damage is so low that getting the extra damage just doesn't matter. The 3 charges is pretty good. This is one of the better ways for camping mobs because you just place the bear trap down under where they'll be. It doesn't say, but they last like 30 seconds and then it shows up and then it's off cooldown. So as soon as it comes off, you can cast it again. Lightning Reload. This lets you use a skill, reload, and then use it again. Let me just show you. So the bear trap disappears, but it's available immediately after. So you can basically keep a permanent bear trap. This is nice for like zoning, like kind of close alleyways, at least during enemy pushes. So Raining Death, I'm just going to show the Lightning Reload. So this lets you cast 1 ability for free. This is only like weapon abilities, so it's not like you can Lightning Reload and then get double Vine Trap, for example. So just to show an example, Raining Death is the big AoE, and then we can Lightning Reload, and it gives you a highlight showing that all these abilities are available again, and then you can use Raining Arrow again. It doesn't reset the cooldown either. But as soon as you use Lightning Reload, it starts that kind of cooldown. Ideally, you want to use an ability first, and then Lightning Reload, so that the cooldown is ticking while you're, you know, Lightning Reloading, casting it again. So let's keep going. Thundering Shot. So this is like a really slow projectile that's great for chasing single targets that are kind of running out of range. The 10 stacks of shock, so it's 25% lightning damage, and it stacks 10 times. So 10 times 25 is 250, plus the 200% physical damage. Technically, Thundering Shot does more damage than Snipe over if you include consuming the shock stacks. So it's very good to always consume that if possible. A lot of people go for Explosive Thundering Shot. So it hits enemies in the area and it applies shocked to all of them. I am like 95% sure it does anyway. So just to show an example of what it looks like when I cast it. So 30 meter range, a little bit of a cast time, very slow travel time, but it explodes, and then you can see those 10s from just my auto attacks triggering the shock stacks. And the main way that people kind of use this is, you know, you do lots of attacks until you trigger concussion, and then you use Thundering Shot to give the silence. And then, you know, when the enemy can't do anything for 4 seconds, it's a lot easier to kill them. Moving on, Fine Field. So this has a 40 meter range. So this is even longer range than Snipe. And it basically has like a half-second cast time, and then targets become rooted who step in it or who touch it. If you cast it, people who are in it when you cast it become people who are hit by like the initial hit become hemorrhaging if they were already bleeding. But if someone's bleeding and they run into it, they do not become hemorrhaging. And then ensnaring Vine Field, so they get 1 stack of snared per second, and it does cap out at 75% slow. And the way a snared stack works weird, but that's not related to this class video. So just to show you an example, we're just going to root this guy way down here. So very long cast range, as you can see. It has like a green AoE effect, and you can just like click to cast wherever you want it to be. So we're going to cast it there, rooted, and roots last for 4 seconds. And I mean, that's pretty much it, right? And you saw that the snare stacks he was getting. Moving on, we already talked about marks. Party Stride. So Rangers have a built-in like ability that they can cast that's a buff on an ally. So Strider is a 10% increased move speed, lasts for 15 seconds. You can cast it on an ally or on yourself. So Strider is the one that you get at level 8. So you can cast it on your mount to have your mount go faster, for example. And you can cast this on caravans to make caravans go faster. Ranger is a very solid like alt option or main option just for caravan boosting, if nothing else. Yeah, I mean, that's literally it. You just cast it and they get 15 minutes of 10% speed. Do keep in mind that if someone is in an event, you will have to PvP flag, which is these cross swords, force flag. And when you have these, it doesn't mean that you're PvP flagged, but it means that you can, if you do something that would PvP flag you, now you can do it. And there's some settings that you should really look at before you get too into it, like going into the game options, like these settings. Yeah, PvP force flag, toggle force flag. Is there stuff about corruption? Yeah, but you guys can look through the settings. There are definitely some that are mandatory to do in there. Moving on, because this is the should you play Ranger video. Raining Death. So this gives 2 instances of AoE damage. Ignore the animation. It's actually just like a really wide cone. It doesn't actually follow like the 3 or 4 arrows that shoot out. It's actually just the full 40 range. So that's Raining Death, and it does a stack of wound to enemies for each hit, and since it hits twice, it applies 2 stacks of wound. The 20% extra damage to shock targets doesn't really matter that much, because going from 100% to 120%, and then your shock stacks are going to get consumed so quickly that's not really worth like caring about. Back to talents. And then we have, I should have finished with Party Stride. So this applies to all group members within 30 meters, so it literally means people that are in your party. If you're in a raid, only the people in your party get affected, and only those in 30 meter range. Something else is that Party Stride only affects you and everyone else's mounts and everyone else. It does not affect your own mount, and I don't know why. So always keep Strider for your own mount if it doesn't have the buff already, or remember that, I should say. Moving on, Call of the Wild. So this removes all snared and chill status from you, and you become immune to movement impairing effects. I believe this includes root. So Call of the Wild breaks all disabling effects on the caster. So this is our CC break basically, and it also gives us a 20% move speed for 8 seconds. So I should probably move mine to a more accessible button. I would not recommend having this like on a shift modifier. So just a little half-second cast, boom, and then that breaks you out of CC, and now you can't be slowed, you can't be rooted for 8 seconds. So Ranger is a solid class to be shot caller on, because you can just focus on where the enemies are. You can make the clumps happen with the root, and then if you do get trapped, you can Call the Wild, dodge out, or you can like disengage your own way out, etc. Moving on, Airstrike. So this is the shooting arrows down while you're moving. This skill is kind of like super terrible. And you'll see why. So I press Airstrike, 1, 2, 3. It's like 2 seconds of not being able to move. It hardly moves you any distance, and the little AoE circles are super small. It does do good damage, but if you're in melee range and you're not like scatter shot, raining of death, putting down your AoE root, using your AoE thundering shot, like you have too many abilities, and the time to kill is too short where this would ever be useful. So I basically only use this for mobility on like getting over things, or like up rocks, for example. And then let's go over the passives that are like built in when you're leveling. Siphoning Regeneration. Each time you do damage to a marked target, or whoever has your rejuvenating, they gain 5% health and mana regeneration based on the damage dealt. So this is like your mana sustain option. So if you use your mark, so any damage I'm doing is giving me like regeneration to my health and mana. It doesn't show up as like a buff or anything, but it just instantly fills up my HP bar, for example. If time to kill wasn't so short, this would be pretty good. Right now it's kind of a meh, but how many of these talents are dead? So may as well put it up here, right? Moving on to the built-in skills. Weapon Mastery Bows. So Barrage and Scattershot gain 3 seconds cooldown reduced every time you hit an enemy with Weapon Combo Finisher. So a Weapon Combo Finisher is every 3rd hit, basically. So 1, 2, 3, and then on that 3rd hit, it reduces your Scattershot and your Barrage cooldown by 3 seconds. So attack speed increases the amount of times that you can use your abilities. The more auto attacks you get, the more Scattershot and Barrage you can get off. The more auto attacks, the more armament procs you get off. Not that they do more damage or anything, but yeah. So Barrage. So fires a continual barrage of arrows at target for 1.5 seconds. basically, you press this, and it just shoots out a whole bunch of little arrows, and it does damage. If the target is bleeding or hemorrhaging, it reduces the cooldown of the ability faster. So you do auto attacks, and then the barrage hits themselves reduce the cooldown of barrage. So I'm just going to auto attack this guy once, and then I'm going to do barrage. I was out of range. So it does a whole bunch of little numbers, and you can see that it's glowing purple because I have the concussive armament. And then you probably saw that the cooldown went down a little bit. Actually, no, because the target wasn't bleeding. These things die too fast, but if you put on bleed ammo, or if you get them bleeding beforehand, etc., you get the idea. So that is barrage. The problem with barrage is that, one, you kind of move slower while you're doing it, which, I mean, you're going to be moving slower if you're using auto attacks anyway, right? So it's not that big of a deal. But when you're doing auto attacks, like, you can jump to like gain extra distance. So barrage is kind of worse in that respect compared to just normal auto attacks. I'm not 100% certain personally if it's actually worth ever using barrage, at least in PvP, because if people see that stream of arrows, they will spam dodge so that all the arrows miss. And in the stamina tree, regain 5 stamina upon successfully dodging an incoming attack. So you use barrage, they dodge, they just dodge like 5 arrows. Their stamina bar fills up. So you're actively doing negative DPS if you use barrage against someone in PvP and they have a brain and know to push the button that makes them invincible. Moving on. So that's barrage. Camouflage. So this skill doesn't work. Basically, it makes you all spooky, invisible. My understanding is that it basically just doesn't do anything other than hide your nameplate right now. But while you're invisible, you can do gathering, you can ride your mount, you can ride a caravan, etc. So if you like that extra little level of security, like, maybe it's an option. We'll see what rogue looks like, but if you use an ability or if you start sprinting, yeah, that'll happen. And then the cooldown says it doesn't start until you leave camo, but it actually does, right? Like, that definitely wasn't a minute, we just waited. So, and I can use it again already. So I don't know if there's 2 charges or what's going on with this thing. It says that it's supposed to have a 1-second cooldown, right? So something is wrong. Moving on, thorns. This is just a permanent buff you put on an ally. Every time that someone hits the enemy, they get damage reflected back to them. It's only 8 damage. So if I shoot this guy once, he hits me, he takes 8 damage. I'm just going to let this go for a bit, but eventually it will proc a bleed due to thorns. Yeah, and then if I want to, I can cast roots, and then I'll turn it into hemorrhaging. Yeah, it does a lot more DPS. So that's thorns. It's best to put this on caravans and on your tank. Just be warned that if you put it on the caravan, it will put you in combat if someone hits it. Strider, we already went over. Regeneration. This basically gives you like 25 HPS or something, like 15 HPS. You can just see my HP bar going up. Like, you do have passive regeneration, but it's that much. And then always keep in mind, you can always type /sit, or you press X is the default key, and you'll gain increased mana and health regeneration per second while sitting. That is the skills. Weapons, like, every tree has weapons. This isn't class specific, but in general, you're always going to be using a 2-handed longsword. It's basically just a stat stick. You don't gain anything from any of these skills because you're not using them. Longbow, my current recommendation is to go for deadly finishers and just crit chance, and then just full penetration. So let's talk about that crit that I was talking about before. So in PvE, it seems like mobs cannot be crit as much, so you're basically stuck being forced to go full penetration. I would at least especially recommend full penetration while leveling. Yeah, so you're either going to be using a longbow or shortbow. Shortbow is many times better than a longbow in terms of medium to small scale PvP, just because Arrow Storm does so much more damage. I am not going to explain the tech, but even this green shortbow, which reduces my power from 450 down to 389, is going to do much more DPS than this longbow that's epic level 20, just because of how Arrow Storm works currently. The reason why I made a longbow anyways is because longbows are better for Zerg versus Zerg, because you're more caring about the actual damage that you're doing on the initial hit of skills and not necessarily proccing off of Arrow Storm, which is limited to a single target. When you land root on 20 people, having that extra damage is more important than getting the Arrow Storm benefit on one target. Alright, if you were watching the video, you can skip ahead to this point. So, gearing, basically, this isn't the ideal gear, this isn't best in slot, whatever. Currently, enchanting's borked, like, so it's giving extra bonus. Everyone's building level 10 stuff, blah, 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 blah. Enchanted +8 and everything, basically, except for like 2 pieces that are +7. Yeah, and right now with stats, you basically just want to build full physical power. Secondary stats are kind of whatever. Penetration's okay. Strength is good because it also gives accuracy along with power, and it also gives penetration, which are like the 3 best stats right now. So strength stacking is good. Physical gear is cheaper to get than magical gear. Physical gear also tends to include more stamina, or I should say constitution. So a mage at my level might have like 4.2k health, but I'll have like 4.7k just because physical gear tends to include more constitution in the slots that you build. Yeah, so that is all of the abilities, that is all of the skills, the gearing, the weapons. So how does Ranger actually play? Should you play Ranger? So let's start with the leveling experience. Leveling as the Ranger is one of the worst options that you can pick. Tank is the only thing worse than Ranger in terms of leveling. Yeah, it's just, so we only have like, what, 1, 2, if you look at the talent tree for the weapon, so you're leveling up, right? You put a point into scatter shot. Okay, so it does 125% physical damage, and then maybe 250%, but that's after, you know, a 1.1 second channel time, right? So sorry, 1 second. So your first damage ability only does like very slightly more damage than just auto attacks would. And then headshot, it does do good damage, but it's based off of your weapon damage, and it's only below targets below 50% HP. And you're like, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, you unlock the next tree. So you don't really get to invest in this snipe right away. You get a hunt, you know, you get your bleed ammo. So you have so this, it says 2.9, but I have a lot of attack speed. Normally, this is 4 seconds of doing 400% damage. I'm going to let you do the math on 100% damage per second. Using snipe is good as an opener, but it's pretty much useless the rest of the time. You're better off just auto attacking in general. Like, I mean, technically snipe is better because you can turn the bleed into hemorrhage and stuff, but it's just, yeah, it's not great for leveling when you don't have that attack speed. Vines is a good kiting tool, but it's just a root, right? Lightning Reload takes a lot of mana, and it only lets you do 1 mid ability again, right? And then Thundering Shot is probably your best leveling skill, but by this point, you're like level, what, 11, 15 maybe? By the time you're up to this point, and you can, like, you know, get these side trees and other than the base skills, so it's like, it's just not good. And, you know, 2 points into just a CC break, like a 5% regeneration based on the damage you deal, you're not doing very much damage while you're leveling. And your HP bar, like just due to base stats, is pretty big, and so is your mana bar. So like you can't really sustain off that. This sucks. This doesn't give you any more damage. And then you have these 9 talents that are basically just toggles on. And then the mark that has a 1 minute cooldown when you're doing AoE trash packs on a single target. So you can see why Ranger is not really good. You don't have sustain. You don't have like burst damage. Your only CC is on a root, or you can do the kiting arrow. And you're spending the whole time jumping around like a little rabbit, kiting circles around mobs, being all fancy. Meanwhile, like a mage or a bard or, you know, the other classes, they can just sit there and tank it, or they can like AoE root and chill and like just bomb mobs. So Ranger is very bad for leveling. Tank is worse though. I've got a tank to level 4 and I deleted it, so I'm not going to talk about that. So that's the leveling experience. Rangers suck. Everyone kind of knows it. You'll see people in global looking for mage. Sometimes they'll take fighters because fighters do more AoE DPS than rangers. Yeah, so leveling sucks. It's just kind of undertuned. Mid game, you're still not super great when you hit level 25 fresh and you don't have gear. Yeah, that's it. You're just not super great compared to other classes. Like, you're basically approaching to be on par. End game, once you hit this point of 400 physical power plus, this is when Ranger starts to be, I'm not going to say on top, be one of the better classes in terms of DPS. Because you have the AoE potential for Zerg versus Zerg. You have the Zerg versus Zerg, like, vine field trap, right? Like, you can't dodge while you're rooted, you know, and this is basically most people's only damage reduction option that they have is the dodge abilities, and you take that away with root. And then the slowing effect on them, like, they're super slowed by 75% for seconds afterward. It's just devastating. Plus the AoE wound stacks, etc. So very good in Zerg versus Zerg. It is pretty good in medium scale PvP because you can concussion targets and then silence them, and then you also have like a lot of single target like focus pressure and kill pressure, and you make the the casters cast slower, etc. And you have your own slippery CC break, and you can like kind of get like an extra mobility thing. So medium scale PvP, pretty good. Small scale PvP, this is like one person, maybe 2 to 3 people. It is good / okay. The thing about smaller scale PvP is that fighters and mages are your main competition in terms of a damage slot, and both of those classes have sleep options in terms of incapacitate and just the channel sleep that they can click on a target and cast leap from far away. And when you shut someone down, a 2 versus 1, like they're gonna blow that person up, right? And you can CC break yourself out of it, but maybe they trip you, use your CC break, then they sleep you, and then they just kill your friend while you're stuck there, for example, or vice versa. Ranger just has damage, and we have like a little bit of lockdown. That's it. So, fine field, they're stuck there, and then raise is expiring. You put down another AoE root on top of them, and then once that expires, they become DR'd 2 roots, so you can't use any more. Yeah, so small scale, good, but the other classes are better. Medium scale, pretty darn solid. Large scale, very good. Early game, very bad at leveling. Mid game, okay, but most people will still prefer mages and fighters over you. And then late game, mages are still better in terms of like AoE's glint farming, but rangers have a solid place in PvP. Yeah, so that is the state of the game for Ranger right now as things stand. Let's talk about what does a group mob farm look like, and then what does a raid versus raid look like. So a group mob farm, right? Tank pulls the targets. They're all staying in front of you. You're running bleed ammo because it does more damage. So you channel your snipe, scatter shot, and it puts bleed on all of the targets. Once they have bleed, you apply your vine field to proc all those bleeds into hemorrhaging. So one of the problems is that the scatter shot is a very narrow cone. So basically all the mobs have to be stacked pinpoint or in a vertical line, like around a door, for example. So scatter shot, AoE root to trigger that bleed into a hemorrhage, and then you scatter shot again. Then you can thundering shot, raining death, and then lightning reload, thundering shot again. So the reason why you don't lightning reload and thundering shot again is because raining death gains extra damage, plus you actually have to give time for those shocked stacks to go away. I actually don't know if they stack or not. We could try that right now. So we will do thundering stop auto attacking. So we'll do a thundering shot, then we'll reset thundering shot again. Yeah, target died too quick, but you get the idea. Maybe it does stack and I'm wrong. I actually don't see a reason why it wouldn't stack, but it's only at 5 stacks also because I'm running this AoE explosive talent. So that's basically what your Zerg that's what your group mob farm looks like. The problem with Ranger is that 30-second cooldown, 20-second cooldown, 45-second cooldown, 10-second cooldowns. You auto attack to refresh them, but you're kind of like a dump everything in the first 5 or 6 seconds, and then you're just auto attacking and scatter shotting very slowly. Yeah, so it's not super great, but it's okay. And when you get to this point where I'm at in terms of gearing, you're still not comparable to mages. Mages are just the best, but it's okay. Fighters have to be in melee range, so you know, that's not good for them. It's kind of the main advantage that we have. Otherwise, we do a bit less damage than they do still. So that's basically what mob farming looks like, is you're just dropping your AoEs. Very simple rotation. Moving on to Zerg versus Zerg. I'm just going to pull over this video. I'm probably going to skip through it or whatever, but yeah. So we'll do F11. I did mute the comms for this. So this is just an example of like what a chokehold looks like. So I'm just going to pause here. So there's walls, chains, roots going down, you know, control the choke. Both sides rangers are getting lots of value. Nobody can auto attack through or over this wall, so the people who went ahead are probably going to die out there. We have what we call uppies, which is the gravity boost from the bards in our party, so that we can get up and over these walls during the choke point. So, you know, jumping up, rain of arrows, scatter shotting on people. You know, I'm definitely not doing like an optimal rotation, right? Like this is very hectic. But you know, more people getting caught in roots, lots of ranger values from their side. Yeah, so it's kind of just this is what like I guess a more AoE engagement looks like. And you can also poke with charge scatters because it also goes up to 45. That raining was a bit too soon. So here we catch some of them out. People are like, ooh, yes, let me poke them. So everyone steps up, but then they get caught out just by a root, right? And if you get rooted in a Zerg versus Zerg, you're gonna die really quick. So here they decide that they can push forward, counter root, for example, and then we just charge AoEs into them. And, you know, thousands of damage pumped out just by me on their AoE, along with debuffs. And, you know, that they lost too many people there. We decide that we can push out after recovering, I believe. Just skipping ahead. Yeah, so we recover and we push out, etc. Purple, pretty good at PvP. Up to this point, they're pretty much the best group that we had fought so far. Yeah, so you land a root. You can do your charge snipes from afar when it's safe while you're waiting for the ult call. And honestly, that root was a waste though. I thought we were all ready here to go in, at least because all these people are caught out, but it's whatever. Let's look at a standoff kind of fight here. So here, they're holding a choke in an extremely weird position, so we can't exactly just run in right away. So in this case, right, like everyone's kind of rolling back and forth, dodging skills. You're pressing B and auto-attacking whoever you can reach. Rangers tend to use longbows in Zerg versus Zerg because it gives that extra 35 meter range compared to other bows 30 meter range. Plus, the way that skills work is that as long as you start casting them, it doesn't matter how far they go, it'll go off, unless it's some things like a snipe if they move really far. But stuff like Thundering Arrow Shot will like follow people like super slow motion really far away. So this is what like it kind of looks like is, you know, you're just doing auto attacks, blinking away. I wasted my root. Looks like someone decided to go in on it. Some people are going in, but it wasn't called yet. And then now, once we get a couple of kills in the front, we start doing our push in. But this is kind of what it looks like in terms of like a Zerg versus Zerg. And then once the all called dives go in, you know, you can dodge forward or you can use your disengage blink. Here, I'm just being careful because I know that it's another choke, but they're all dead and I didn't see that. Trying to think if there's anything else really here. Not really. Just for Zerg versus Zerg, your main job is basically to like rain of arrows on mobs. So it's very chill, right? Like you're just in Zerg versus Zerg, you're putting down your root, you're doing your rain of arrows, you're kind of just moving up and dumping damage generically. And then, you know, if someone's stuck out or like a wrong class, wrong place, then you can, you know, you can consider using barrages, but that'll just give people dodge energy. So a lot of the time you're just auto attacking people. And you also have the opportunity of like starting a barrage on someone else and tabbing to someone else. Yeah, that snipe was a waste, for example. So that is pretty much that. Let me get out of F11 here. Close out of that. Oh, why do I have a shield? That is not good. We're not at war. Is it a node war? Oh, that's second. Here we go. Killed Herb, Halcyon against Mirleth. Okay, looks like Halcyon is declaring war on Mirleth. Let me hide here, because it looks like, yeah, we got some PvP going on. So I'm gonna log off for just a minute here, hook up with my guild, we'll do some PvP. So let's look back at videos. Did I have anything else for you guys? I don't think so. That's pretty much, should you play a ranger? It's a pretty easy class to play. There's only like 5 or 6 buttons to press because of so many passive trees. And it kind of sucks early, mid, gets better late. Ranger is probably one of the ones that are due for rework sooner than later, but I would say don't rely on Intrepid fixing things to how they should be. Play the game as it is right now. Because they, like, you hear stuff like, oh, rogue's coming out, or like, oh, they're going to do enchanting nerfs, and then, you know, it's like 3 weeks later, still nothing's changed. So it's better to play the game as it is right now rather than how they're promising that it will be. So come phase 3, I would recommend, you know, check back in, see if they did any like sweeping changes, or if they're planning to do any sweeping changes for the very start. And if they're not, then it is what it is. Would I recommend Ranger? I would recommend Ranger if you have a dedicated 8-man for leveling, because it sucks solo. I would recommend Ranger if you are more interested in playing the game rather than playing a class that's incomplete, because it's easy enough where you can just kind of focus on auto-attacking with the bow and just being at range the full time. If you're looking for like the most powerful, or like, you know, the most pug easy, it's better to go with a mage or fighter. Fighters are not good in Zerg versus Zerg, so if you're interested in large scale PvP, I would pick a ranger or a mage if you're looking for damage options. Yeah, so that is pretty much the state of the game for ranger. I guess let me know if you have any questions in the comments down below, and I'll answer them, but I'm not going to be going over tech or like secondary stat priority meta stuff, etc. All right, thanks, goodbye.